Hey everyone, welcome to the Self-Awareness Journey podcast. I'm Melissa Albers.
And I'm JJ Parker. This podcast is for seekers. Seekers of happiness and joy, seekers of a centered approach to success in life, seekers of their true, authentic selves.
Get ready for some real talk on everything from anxiety, emotions, and habits to love, compassion, and forgiveness. We know you'll be challenged and enlightened by this conversation. We're so glad you're here. Let's dive in.
Today, Melissa, we're going to talk about early impressions.
Okay.
Maybe early childhood experiences, early school and maybe even work experiences, and how those shape the way you think and behave today as an adult.
I like this topic.
Ready?
Yes.
I feel like you should be laying down on like a therapy couch.
I should.
Because here we go.
I know. Whenever we start to talk about something like this, I immediately sort of seize up. And I think it's because I've had such a squirrely upbringing that I feel like, the way I was raised is so different than most other people's. And I have to be so careful of the narrative.
Yeah. So right there.
I guess that's one of them.
This is what we're talking about, right? This is what we're talking about is there's things that happened when you were young, right?
Yeah.
That have a big impact on you as an adult.
Right. Yep. For all of us, and so many things that we don't even think about, right? Yeah. It's just part of our natural way of thinking now and being. Yeah,
and not even in some of them possibly in a negative way.
Yeah, right.
But some of them in a positive way. And to me, it's more just kind of exploring what those things are, right? And deciding, are they serving you today? Is that how you want to be today? Right? And actually being able to get some objectivity around it and then choose instead of just running everything on autopilot based on your past experiences.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's a great conversation. And actually, I hadn't even thought about it from the work perspective, but that's such a good one. I remember when I was younger and I was getting into high school, I was trying to figure out, I always sort of dreamed about what I was going to be when I grew up. Did you do that?
I don't know. I was such a nerd. I think my dreaming was very limited or very focused, I guess.
Yeah, you were too busy tying ropes behind car bumpers and skiing in the street.
Around as a young person. Yeah.
Oh no,
Okay, so what was your child? What did you think you were going to do?
Oh yeah. Well, I always fancied myself as being a pretty detailed person.
You're wrong about that.
I know. But I actually just would picture myself. Okay, so for example, I loved reading. I read incessantly read from the time I was really young. And as I got a little older, the stuff that I would play, some kids would play little girls would let's play house, let's play dress up. Nope. I wanted to play library. And so I would my grandparents were both ministers and they each had their own offices in their home. And their offices were just packed with books, and my grandpa had this really old big desk and it had all of these cool drawers in it. And it smelled like tobacco and ink, it was just this. I loved being in that office. And so I used to sit at that huge desk and this huge chair, and I would pretend that I was a librarian. And the way that I pretended I was a librarian, I think this is so funny, is I wrote letters to people that hadn't returned their books on time with fines.
Your childhood fantasy is fining for late library books. Well, if we're going to unpack that a little bit, what I would observe with you, is that while you can dive into detail work, you are more of a big picture thinker.
Oh, for sure.
But what you do all the time is beat yourself up for not being so detailed. Right?
Yes. Oh my goodness,
you do that all the time.
Huh.
right?
You're right. You're totally right.
And
I
so
do.
one of the questions I would have for you to think about
Uh-oh.
would be,
Oh,
would be
no.
like, you had an idea of how maybe you should be as a kid,
right.
and you're still kind of wrestling with
yes.
not fulfilling that idea.
Yes. Yeah. Because whenever you and I, like, even are in the creation mode doing something new or whatever, like, you'll pick up on a thread of something and you'll be able to just like, just like dive into it with all of this stuff. And then I always feel like, and I know it's not truth. I know that's not truth.
Yeah.
And it's not a comparison thing. I just naturally go to, oh, I can't do that. Right. And then I just think, oh, why can't I do that? Like, everybody else seems to be able to do that. Well, so it is something that affects me all the time.
That's the interesting part, right? That's like a narrative was impressed on you, maybe even by yourself, right?
Yeah.
Or the environment you grew up and it's not working for you today, right? It makes you feel bad today.
And actually, it never has. It's never worked for me well.
Yeah.
Like, for example, I got into jobs that were so not what I should have been doing in my early career, because I had this narrative going that I would get better if.
Yeah. So that's a great example of, our own early thoughts shaping how we see the world, right?
Yep.
But there's lots of, family stuff, right? The way your family acted as a kid, an early impression that would be probably pretty impactful for most people would be like, how did your parents deal with money? The way your parents dealt with money really affects the way your relationship with money as an adult, right?
Yep.
So if there was, if there was a mindset growing up, like we don't have enough, we're always struggling, your relationship with money as an adult, even if you become like really like well off, is still a reflection of that childhood experience.
Oh yeah. I think that's so true. Like, I was just listening to something a couple of weeks ago, and I don't remember if I mentioned that to you or not, but I was listening to this spiritual teacher. She's like really, really well known and just great. And she was talking about money and how we are programmed around money at an early age. And she started listing all of the things that you're told as a child. You just threw out a couple of them, but like all of the phrases about not having enough money. And it really has caused an imbalance in how most people perceive money. And, she was saying how she had an older brother, and her older brother, any extra cash that the family had went to his sports. And that was really important because he was so athletic and they wanted him to have every opportunity through his sports. And then when it was her birthday, one day her father bought her a dress. And she said, why can't I have like some kind of sporting equipment? I can't remember what it was. Why can't I have that like my brother does? And her father started to yell at her and said, you are ungracious. You don't know. Do you know how hard I had to work to get this money to buy this for you? Never ask again. So really, really impressing upon her. Yep. And there's so many things layered in that, right? It isn't just money. It's also like self-worth. It's also like girl versus boy. Like, and she said it stuck with her entire life.
Yeah, that's a big impact.
Yeah. Right? How about you? Can you think of any that you had?
Well, now you're gonna put me on a spot. I was gonna keep asking you questions.
Oh, do you remember how we started the pod? Oh, well, Melissa.
Well, so I would, I'd say one of the big things for me as a kid, I was very quiet. It's like really quiet. Like I was so quiet that one of my teachers in elementary school like went to my parents and was like, oh, I think there's something, like wrong with JJ because he doesn't talk ever.
Oh,
right?
Wow.
But just sort of going through like sort of my probably like elementary school and middle school experience, like almost not talking at all.
Wow.
Like I remember I went to a concert with with my high school friends. I must have been like 11th grade or something. And there was this girl there that was like dating one of my friends. And I had gone to elementary school with her. Like I'd been in school with her my whole life, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And we were at this concert and, I was like engaging with my friends, or I was talking about the band. I was very engaged and I was talking a lot. And she pulls me aside and she goes, JJ, we've been going to school together since kindergarten. I've never heard you talk.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. So I have this perception that of this idea that I need to be quiet. Like I am quiet, right?
Yeah.
And that sort of feeds into my like introverted tendency, right? So we've talked about it. When I'm at trade shows, when I have to do things that are a lot more like vocal and talking, I do get a little bit of that like I shouldn't be talking so much. I should shut my mouth.
Really? Okay, so your impression when she said that, and like even still as you're reflecting on it, you actually feel like you should be more of what you already are.
Well, this is actually not her comment, but I think just more like my more comfortable spot is this like really quiet spot where I don't talk a lot.
Right. Huh. So that's so interesting because my more comfortable spot is talking more. And yet I would make myself feel like I should be doing the reverse of that.
Huh.
Isn't that interesting? Yeah. Like as soon as you were talking about being in school and not talking and having a teacher call home, I can promise you that was never my experience.
That's never your problem.
No, there were a couple of times I remember having my desk pushed to the corner of the room because I was talking too much.
Yeah, so your message is talk less.
Yeah, exactly. And in my kindergarten report card, which I know I've mentioned in a previous pod before, I was given this feedback. Missy needs to stop bossing other people around again. So it was a kindergarten report card. Oh. And my bonus mom found the report card not too many years ago, and she slid it across the table, and it was in an old brown manila envelope. And she was a teacher, and then she became a principal of a grade school. And so when she slid this thing over, she said, well, I wasn't going to look at anything or read it. And I was like, well, who cares? It's like kindergarten report card. And she was already trying to protect me because she knew what it said.
Well, you said another thing that has a big initial impact on young people.
What's that?
That carries them through into their adulthood. You said spiritual religion would be another one of those things.
Oh my gosh, you're so right.
That people should reflect on, right? Because, and not in a good, I'm not in a judgmental way.
Right. No, just
on
notice
religion,
it.
But like, like even your early experiences with religion versus what you want it to be today as an adult and how you want to use it and engage in it today as an adult might likely be very different.
Right. Oh my gosh, that's so true. Because most people I don't think would approach their childhood religious experiences with objectivity in contrast or comparison to what they're going for today. I think they naturally move in a direction based on that, and there's usually some energy around that. Right? Like strong expectation. Either they loved it and they were going to replicate it for their own family, and if they can't find something to do that does that, that's a hard thing. That's a hard thing for the family, or if they, like we always say that my husband is a recovering Catholic because he had, he went to Catholic school, and boy, those nuns up in St. Cloud were pretty serious about their trade. Right. So there's just a lot of things that he remembers being guilted and shamed and feeling terrible. And he's such a good person, but he has all these ideas about that he still trying to unravel some. So yeah, I think you're
it still has to work through, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a huge impact.
Yeah.
The other thing that you touched on was work. Like I actually really like this idea of how work puts an impression on us early. Right? A lot of our first jobs are like entry level jobs, right?
Yeah.
And to me, even more than the job itself is your coworkers. Because I remember one of my first jobs was I worked at Circuit City. They're not even around anymore. They're like a competitor to Best Buy, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Like consumer electronics kind of stuff. I sold car stereos.
You did?
Oh yeah. I was
Oh my
super
gosh,
into car stereos.
I never knew that.
Oh yeah. I had huge speakers in my trunk and the whole thing rattled. It was ridiculous. And I'll lose my hearing soon.
It didn't bounce, did it? Like when you went down the road,
the car did not bounce, but the mirrors like visibly rattled and shook. My parents would always and then I always work on this stuff like super late at night or like basically early in the morning, and they'd be like get woken up at like 3 a.m. because we got the new speakers wired in and we're testing it out, shaking the whole house.
Oh my god. Oh my god. Did you work on commission? I'm just curious.
Yes. Oh
what?
Yeah. Oh, I did, and I totally did not understand how it even worked.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny.
Right? Yeah, and one day there was like a sales contest, which I didn't even know the rules of, and then we won, and I got like an extra $600 in my paycheck. I was like, holy crap, like, this is crazy.
Oh my god!
But that did not, unfortunately, that early impression did not turn me into a salesperson.
Yeah,
I did not.
Shocker.
Yeah.
I have never heard that story before. I never knew that you worked in a sales role.
A commissioned
sales role.
It was for like a hot 6 months, too.
How many other cars were bouncing and lighting up all the way down the road after that?
Well, in any case, working for Circuit City in the car stereo, whatever, part of the store.
Yeah.
The other guys that work there, they're just such dudes, you know, like, you know, they just had no, for me, right, as I was like more into the electronics of it.
Yeah.
And sort of like the tech specs and all that stuff. You know, these guys were just sort of like bros and knuckleheads. And
oh my god.
But they did have an effect on me. I did actually the thing I learned after I worked there is like, these guys are just crappy workers. Like they're doing the minimum. They're like disrespectful to the manager, right? Like they're just not good.
Yeah.
But I fell into it for a little while. Like I kind of like started adapting into that bad worker mentality with them. Yeah. And then it wasn't until years later, it's like, oh, yeah, I was acting stupid back then. I don't know what, you know.
Hey, isn't there a movie about something exactly like this?
I'm sure there's like 10 movies.
I feel like, is it the 40-Year-Old Virgin?
Oh, no.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
I'm almost
actually,
positive.
It is. You're
right. Steve Carell works in an electronic department, and he is the nicest person and so thoughtful and so particular and cautious. And then he works with a bunch of dudes. Oh my gosh. Tries to be kind of like him, and he's not.
Yep. That was it.
Yeah. I love that.
This idea that those, you know, when we're moving jobs.
Yep.
And right now, right, we had a guest on a few weeks back that talked about, well, we wanted to talk about the Great Resignation, but what he actually started talking about was the Great Migration.
Yes, exactly.
People doing a lot of job switching. And so when you're doing job switching, you have to kind of be conscious that your old sort of habits at your current job, if you move to a new job, are probably coming with you.
Yep.
Right?
Well, and the other thing is that I think not only that, but it's also what you look for in your new job. It's like what you look for in your new thing, whatever it is, as you're moving. Like, as you were talking about your job and your, like, one of your first jobs, I started reflecting, one of the very first jobs that I wanted to do, again, well, we could unpack this for hours, but we won't, I was the president's secretary of a law firm at the age of 21. And I did not even know how to type when I took the job. Right. But there were a bunch of things within that role. And
what kind of hiring process do they have at the law firm?
It was sort of like when the music stopped, they would take a chair and whoever was left standing would end up with that role. It was kind of like that. It was a very dysfunctional place, honestly, extreme, obviously. But what I was going to say is, along with that, I'm also thinking about, well, what are some of the things that I had when I was younger that made huge impression on me in my jobs? And in that law firm, there was one up and coming associate lawyer who really hated me because I was a strong female. He was so mean to me, and he would wait till other people weren't around to act a certain way towards me.
Wow.
And but that was actually a theme throughout much of my career, is when you're a strong female, there are many men who are intimidated by that. And I believe that's why we're getting this huge wave of girl bosses and all these things, right? Like Sheryl Sandberg and all of these movements about elevating women to equal status with men in the workplace, but which is not what this whole topic is about. But I do want to reflect. Well, I mean, I think
it is.
Yes. I mean, we could do, I guess what I meant to say is we could do an entire podcast on that and probably a series on that. But just in the reflective moments of this conversation, I actually had a boss that told me that I needed to wear a skirt or a dress when I was going on appointments, that I was not allowed to wear pants because that's not what nice young women did. Like, so even being informed of how to dress, and then, that early programming was like, hey, lots of men don't like you if you're going to be strong. So tone it down, be quieter. Don't assert yourself in any way, shape, or form. It doesn't matter how good you are.
Some of those things might unconsciously affect you when you go out on sales calls today.
Yeah.
Or when you engage with people today. Yeah. Well, and especially if you're not aware of it, right?
Right.
You're very aware of it.
Yes.
You've been working on it for a long time.
Right. Yeah.
So you can get better perspective of it. But if you're not aware that that's affecting you,
right.
Yes. That's powerful.
Yeah. So that whole idea of women in the workplace and this evolution that's occurred, some of the early programming and I, you know what? It's so funny because, I think I am what I would call a survivor, just having the crazy upbringing that I did. So in that survivor mindset, it's like, well, don't really reflect on what happened. Just do your best now and move forward. Like, don't think about the other stuff like that. That's unpleasant. So I actually almost forget about some of that stuff. Like, look at this. We're into this conversation this far, and I didn't even really remember that until you started reflecting on one of your earlier stories about work. So it's very interesting, which is exactly the hypothesis that you and I had when we first started this. It's like, how aware are you even of what some of those early impressions are? Yeah.
The only other work-related deprogramming thing I want to touch on is we actually use that as a word at our company. Like that when we have people that come work for us that have come from like a big company, like maybe they've come from a big Fortune 500 company, and they come work for our little like 50-person company. It's a whole different ballgame. And on top of that, our culture, we're very particular about our culture.
Yes.
And the way trust and accountability works in it. So we actually talk about how when we have new people come work for us, there is a deprogramming period.
Yeah.
And our managers know that like we need to try to instill our culture and bring these people, like new people, into our culture. And we need to actually give them a bit of grace because we understand they're going to have to be deprogrammed for a little while.
That's so
and reprogrammed
true.
into our culture.
Right. Yeah, it's true. And it is just that it's, what's funny is that when we're faced with truth in front of our faces, we compare it to our past experience to prove it. Like that's kind of in that situation. It's like, well, we have a high trust, high accountability environment. We don't really need you to be sitting at your desk. We just need you to get your job done. And you know what the person thinks first? Well, that's actually not true.
Oh,
that's what they think.
All the time.
And how many times do we do that when we're faced with absolute truth? We go, that's actually not true.
Yeah. Someone we hired 2 months ago came to me last week and goes, JJ, everyone at all these companies say they act in these certain ways.
Yeah.
But you guys are actually doing it. I've never seen that.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was powerful to me because I was like, thank you.
Yeah.
And
right.
also sad for all other companies.
Right. Yeah. But it is really interesting how much people filter and sort in their brain when they hear something today that's in their lives today, how much they, compare it to what they think and almost disavow it or disbelieve it, even if it is truth, because they're so programmed with those early impressions.
Yeah. Well, good. This was fun. I'm glad we didn't completely derail you.
Ooh, we could have for just a minute. I felt like I was teetering on the edge.
Did you enjoy this episode? Please go to your favorite podcast platform to subscribe, rate, and leave a review so others can discover it as well.
Growing self-awareness is a lifelong journey, and there's always further to go. And it's better when we're all in it together. Please think of someone you know who could benefit from hearing today's conversation and share this episode with them. We can't thank you enough for listening. Until next time, happy exploring, seekers.